Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Andrew Gregory. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So I have a business called Uproot, and we're a marketing agency focused on working with, at this point, home service businesses. So anything from HVAC to lawn care to power washing, some general contracting, those types of businesses. And we really focus on getting them leads and trying to help grow their business, not just in leads and customers, but actually grow it in a profitable way. I come at this with a little bit more of a business background than like a true, marketing or advertising background. So grew up on a family farm operation, have some knowledge from that, have worked in a few businesses who hired agencies, and then started this business about 10 years ago and have been helping businesses grow since then.
And I got to say, the reason I like to talk about marketing a lot is because to me, it's one of those black holes for most businesses. What I mean is, y'all spend a lot of money. And when I ask you what's working and what's not, nobody can necessarily answer the question. They don't
Right.
have clarity on which of their campaigns or which type of advertising or marketing is getting them the best returns. And depending on the business, it's a question of, is it marketing? Is it sales? What's really driving it? And what are the touch points that a customer has to go through in order to do business? And then again, you talked about the trades. One of the things that's unique about the trades is some trades are repetitive, right? So if I call somebody to do my drain, there's a good chance I might call them for another plumbing need. But if I call a roofer, my chances of calling that roofer again are slim. Yet the roofer forgets that person who just got a roof done could refer 3 other people. And so they don't build that type of a relationship. I know my roofer, well, because I have real estate too, but my roofer's done a handful of houses for us, but he's also done 70% of my neighborhood because we have a relationship, right? And that's the thing that I think people forget about is sometimes it's not just more marketing, it's building a relationship with your current clients and doing that. And honestly, a lot of times we talk about getting the truck wrapped. And what I have found is a truck sitting in a neighborhood with a decent wrap and a QR code or a website or a phone number, people are always like, if your neighbor needs a new roof, good chance you need a new roof, right? Because your house was probably built around the same time. And so they look to see what their neighbors are doing. And if you're not picking up on that, then I think you're missing a lot of less expensive marketing.
Right. Yeah. So a couple thoughts there. You're exactly right. The referral side of things is always going to be like the best return of anything. And so doing good work and helping spread that word, however it is, asking people to share it. If you're a small business, people love sharing like, hey, this business helped me. You should use them as well. That's 100% going to be the best return, any business has. And something that a lot of people miss is how that ties into the rest of their advertising and marketing efforts. And I mentioned we use a customer lifetime value calculator. So we basically run the numbers, and we can talk about this in more detail if we want, but we basically calculate out what is the value of a new customer to this business. Something that, again, a lot of people miss is if on average a customer is referring, let's say, 2 other customers, the lifetime value of that original customer is actually way more than just the profit they bring, because now they're generating 2 additional customers, no additional marketing. And so you can run some of those numbers. We have some clients who have almost a 50% of their business, and they're a 1 to 2 million per year business. Almost 50% of it comes from referrals. Their ad campaigns are super successful because they convert all of those customers into referring additional customers, and it's just kind of a waterfall effect. So yeah, that's one of the pieces I think a lot of people don't necessarily see is how these different marketing or advertising channels can play off and help each other as well.
The other thing is, I don't think we think about our business owner referrals. So, for example, you go into a house to do one type of repair. Invariably, the people are like, do you know someone who does X? And if you've got a good group of people that you refer to that you've built a back and forth referral, that you're like, oh, you need a new HVAC. Let me refer you to X. And the idea, though, is that whoever X is also saying for your business, hey, if you ever need, you guys or gals refer back and forth between those. And that comes back to the same thing, relationship marketing. And relationships, they don't cost a lot of money in the sense of the way pay-per-click does.
Yes, correct. Yeah, relationships are key. And another related aspect to that is, building those relationships builds trust. And maybe somebody has mentioned, to their friend or talked about who they had their roof done from. Now, if that person, even if they don't remember who that business is offhand, as they start searching for a business to do that for them, they might ask somebody, they might get some referrals, but they also might just do a little searching on their own. Now, when they see your business name, you've already built some trust just through that word of mouth piece. Again, now the advertising that you were going to do anyways is going to convert so much better because you built trust. And it might be trust from word of mouth, it might be trust from getting reviews, all of those things. Might be trust from just having a really well set up website that tells your story of a locally owned business. All of those things build trust, and that's what's going to convert people into leads and let you start to work your story and try to convert them to a customer.
And I don't think people understand the value of trust because it's hard to put a dollar amount on. But if there is no trust, there is no business. It makes it very difficult to overcome that hurdle. And so it's an important part of that. In the same way, like you said, if your neighbor's getting something done and the truck is there as a free advertisement because of the wrap, and then maybe 2 months later they go looking for something, if that name pops up in the search, like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that truck in my neighborhood, it's familiarity and it's implied trust, even though they may not have had a relationship.
Yeah, and when you think of advertising, you mentioned a few minutes ago the idea of being able to track and understand, what channels are working. And every business is different as to which ones work for them, and not just based on the industry, but also just based on their business. If you're a small, two-person business, different channels are going to work for you than the same industry of a, 30-person business down the road, because you can build trust in different ways. And it'd be great if we could track exactly every customer and exactly where they came from. It almost feels like you can sometimes with certain types of advertising. But exactly what you're saying is people typically will interact or at least have some experience or touch points with the business from multiple different channels. And you can't look at each one completely separate. At the same time, especially with digital marketing, you can get some data back that actually shows you which ones are working and which ones are converting. And it gives you some idea of not only your ROI on the advertising, but also which is A working better than B. And then you start putting more money into the one that works better. And then you test again and you say, is this working better than this? And you don't have a perfect picture, but you can continue to optimize or focus it based on that.
And so when I look at advertising, I think of two different types of companies. One is a company that serves a local area, and they have a very different kind of advertising campaign and a different way to do it than, say, a national company that's going to sell to anyone anywhere. So today we're kind of more focused on that local company because I think AI has changed the whole search algorithm, the way things are being done. But at the end of the day, if I need a plumber near me, Google is still the place to go. For that type of thing, regardless of the service, if you want it or need it to be local and you use that type of search, that's key. And I know you guys work a lot with those types of searches. So let's focus on that because most of that is what? Pay-per-click, Google Ads?
Correct. Yeah. So there's actually a few different aspects and more now with AI. So just a quick overview. Most people use Google today. When you search on Google for, plumber near me, something along those lines, there's multiple different types of listings that show up in those results. Some are just the organic listings of Google saying, hey, we think these websites are the most relevant. Some are the Google business profile or like map listings, and that's very much based on location specific data, and there's ways to improve that. There are a couple paid options related to that with lead service ads. Those are only for certain industries. So some of them it may make sense, but it's pretty specific as to what businesses fall in that category. And then there's the paid search, the paid ads. Those are, we can get into that in a second. I guess one additional, the newer one, as you just mentioned, is kind of the AI search results. And that may be using, a different system, but a lot of times, even within Google search, you'll now see kind of an AI overview at the top. I guess that's a newer piece. The advertising still makes a lot of sense. And I'll dive into that in a second. But the AI side, right now, you can think of that as it's still just Google trying to figure out how to get you the best answer for your question. So how your website's built, how your Google business profile is set up, how other websites link to yours, those are what are going to feed the AI search results. And it's just kind of a different way of displaying that. So going forward, there's definitely going to be changes to search results, and that is going to be a key piece. But again, in the end, all of those are ways of Google trying to, direct somebody to the right location based on what they're searching for.
So I find a lot of business owners waste money in this space. And part of it is because they get excited. Somebody calls them up and says, I can get you 50 leads every day. I'm like, okay, sure you can. But yet they don't realize that just because you get a lead doesn't mean, so A is it a good lead? Because I know I deal with a lot of home service companies, and they'll get leads through these different sources, and they're like, I'm a deck builder, and they call me up to remodel their closets, or, I'm like, do they not know the difference between those two yet? So
Right.
to me, that's a bad lead. Or they're not located in your geography. Bad lead. Might want a deck, but in the wrong community. And then the second half of that is when you do get a good lead, how good are you at dealing with it? And I think a lot of smaller shops don't realize the speed of the response is number one, meaning the first person to answer the phone or call them back is most likely to get the business. What have you found?
Right. Yes, that's 100% true. The response and the follow-up with the lead is extremely important. And that's, I guess, one of the aspects we work with businesses on and always push is how do we make that process smooth? The other side of it that you were just getting at too is what is the quality of the lead and who are you getting in front of? Who is coming through as leads? And I've seen and talked with businesses who, are running lead ads on Facebook, and they're spending thousands and they get tons and tons of leads at a super low cost. But those people are calling them and they're not even aware that they just gave their contact info to this company. They're like, I clicked on the ad and I didn't realize that's what it was. Like, Facebook, Google, they'll all take your money and they'll show your ads, they'll get you in front of people, but whether it's the right people and whether they're people that actually convert into customers is really the trick. So one of our approaches as we start working with these types of businesses is what we call a bottom-up funnel approach. And for this, what we really want to do is as we start diving into this digital advertising, we really want to make sure the first set of people that we're reaching are the high intent audience. So that may be somebody who's going to Google and searching specifically for, new AC unit HVAC company near me, or anything super specific as to they're looking for this business in this location to help their need. And that's really the highest intent audience we can reach from an advertising standpoint. Referrals, again, are going to always be the better option, but you can't force those to happen at a certain time. Whereas advertising, you can adjust. So reaching that audience, or another example is reaching people through retargeting ads. So if your website has a lot of traffic and is established and has grown over time, getting back in front of those people who have been to your website but haven't actually contacted you, they're probably actually even warmer audience because they already know something about you, but they may not have reached out and said, hey, I want a quote today. So anytime we run ads, we always start with that audience and make sure, one, we're showing up and getting in front of those relevant people. And two, and make sure that the rest of the process you were just talking about is actually set up and working and can handle the leads. So the people come from a search, they go to your website. The website has to convert them into a lead form or a call. We need to be able to track those to show which ones are coming from. And then we need to feed those leads to the business so they can follow up with them. And as you said, the speed of the follow-up and the consistency and how that process works is also a really key aspect to actually convert them.
And I think this is where a lot of the balls get dropped, in the sense that if somebody looks at your company and they look at your website, it's unclear, there's no easy way for them to contact you, there's friction. And so for me, friction is, you asked me to fill out a form and it's got 50 million people. Like, nobody wants to fill out a long form, right? I want to be able to talk to somebody or email somebody or set up an appointment quickly. And so the question is, can you do those things? And the second half of it, and maybe you've noticed that demographically, what they want to do is different. So a boomer's going to want to pick up the phone, and I don't know this specifically, but maybe an Xer wants to email, and maybe a young person just wants to schedule an appointment and not talk to you at all. But if you can't handle all of that, right, you're losing a large segment of the audience.
Yeah, exactly. And even within those different audiences, different times of the day, people will want different options, right? If it's during the workday and maybe they're sitting at lunch and searching something, they might not be able to talk on the phone or anything. They might want to send their info and say, hey, call me back at this time. Or like you said, schedule something out. Yeah, if they're a younger audience, they're not going to want to pick up the phone and call you. They might want to text and get a quote in that way. If they're an older audience, they don't want to text. They want to get somebody on the phone, know it's a real person. So having those different options is useful. At the same time, there's a known, I'm not sure what the word is, but it's known that it's better to give people also a specific path to follow. So you don't want to give them 6 options and make them decide if that's complicating things. Ultimately, you want to get them to know what that call to action is right away. Hey, here's the next step. So you don't want to overcomplicate it, but you do want to provide those different options.
Do you find a lot of people make that clear and actionable, or do they overcomplicate it, or do they not even think about it? And I go to a website and it says, XYZ business, and I'm looking all over and I can't find the phone number. I don't know where they're located, or there's no way to contact them easily.
Yeah. So I've seen all sides of it. Definitely one of, the biggest one that you don't want to miss is just making it easy in one way or another to get a hold of you and having an option to call front and center all the time, especially on mobile devices where they can just click it and call you. That is critical. Everybody's been to some corporate website looking for support and they can't find the support number because they literally don't put the phone number there. They don't want you to call. These types of home service businesses, that's the differentiator. That's how you can compete even with some national franchises, is if you're the local business and you're like, hey, call me, I am the owner, I will take your call, I will get back to you, I will be the one who comes out to your house. That differentiates you completely from a franchise that's, run through a call center. And so that's also an aspect of it. As far as I guess the other side of it, of getting too complicated and giving too many options for how to get in touch with you, I always like to say, if you have a phone number that has texting capability, that's extremely important. And then you need some sort of ideally a form. So having an email address listed can be useful. It also can get you a lot of spam, and it doesn't have tracking capabilities. Having a form is really useful from the advertising standpoint of being able to track how many of those come in and log them and automate it into your CRM. But to your point, you also don't want to have a complicated form. You really want to minimize the data that you ask for. And, the idea is to make it useful for the customer, right? Make it feel smooth and easy for them, not feel like, hey, I'm giving them all this info and all I want to know is a couple of key points of, do they service my area, right? But you need both options because, again, if somebody's searching late at night when you're not open, maybe it's 11 o'clock at night, and even if you might answer the phone, they might not want to bug you then, right? Let them send their info and get in touch. Just make it easy for them.
And I think part of the reason this is so important is if you're going to spend money on advertising and you're not doing the follow up, then you're really wasting money on advertising. And I think a lot of business owners are like, I need more leads. And that's the default answer, but they can't handle the leads that are coming in, or they're not handling them well. In which case, it doesn't matter how many leads you have. If you don't do that part of it well, it's really not smart to take the next step. And I think that's one of the reasons you like to focus on the bottom of the funnel, because until it converts and until it converts well, we don't start doing bigger campaigns or some of the other type of stuff. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, and that's exactly right. The focus on the bottom of the funnel and reaching somebody who's raising their hand saying, I need your service in your area. Can you help me? Those, you have to be able to convert those people into customers. Whether it's cost effective to throw thousands of dollars at that or not is to be determined based on close rates and competition and everything else. But the first step is just making sure you have the system in place, the process to follow up, to take that lead, contact them quickly, and convert, a percentage of that. At the same time, as we talked about earlier, you have the whole referral side. How well are you servicing the customers? How much are you able to, convince them, not verbally necessarily, but convince them just based on how good your service is to refer others. And all of that ties into, does this advertising actually work, and can you scale it? If those numbers all align, now you can start scaling up your advertising initially in this high intent audience, but then you can expand into other audiences. If you start with more of the top of funnel, just, hey, let me get my name out there. Let me throw some ads on this platform or buy a billboard, and I'm going to get my name in front of, hundreds of thousands of people. If in the end it might work and you might get leads from it, but if you're not converting those leads, you're just going to say, hey, those were bad leads. It might be your sales process. You just don't know, because it's a lot easier to convince yourself that, oh, the advertising. Whereas if you're getting this high intent audience that's filling out everything and saying, hey, this is what I need, and you still can't convert them, now we kind of know what the next step is. Which piece of that whole channel do we need to focus on and fix so that the actual ROI comes from the
And one of the things I always suggest is a lot of these different systems that are out there that you can use actually record the phone calls. And the reason we want to record the phone calls is if you, the business owner, aren't the one who's answering that phone, you really need to evaluate the people answering the phone. Are they doing what they're supposed to? Are they creating empathy and trust during that phone call? Are they getting the correct information? Are they getting them booked? There's a whole million things that go along with that. And if they're not doing that, or they're not even following the process you've built, then you've got a problem. And so that might happen. Like, you might hit a month and go, wow, things are a little slow this month. I wonder why. And you start to realize, well, 2 of the people answering the phone calls out of 4 aren't following the system. And so it's not that we need more leads. It's not that, the president's messed up the economy. It's half your staff isn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so it's important to be able to notice that, track that, and to constantly, it's trust but verify. So it's not like you got to listen to every single phone call, but you randomly go through and do it. And I think now I even take my client calls and I put them into AI, and it knows what I want to evaluate them on. And I go, judge me. How am I doing with regards to this? Am I following my process, or are there ways that I could improve it? You can do the same thing with your people, and then you can get those kinds of reports. But it's also knowing the metrics. Okay, how much did we spend on advertising? How many clicks did we get? How many of those clicks came to our website? How many filled up a form or made a phone call? Once you start to understand that math, it's not that difficult. It sounds complicated, but it's not. You start to see your numbers, then you can always have the leading edge on your business to know where the problem is breaking down.
Right. Yeah, just like anything else in business, right? In your operations and your administrative side of things, you have to understand what the process is and be able to look at the different parts. And there's always going to be something that needs to be worked on and improved. It's not saying you're doing it all wrong. It's just you might have gotten to this point in your business. Now you have to adjust it so that you can keep moving things forward. And the same with advertising and marketing efforts, you need to figure out how those different pieces all interrelate to find which one is the constraint that's preventing, the other pieces from working. And exactly right. So, some of the form tracking and things like that will give us some data as to, which ad campaign or which keywords are working the best. Call tracking is a very important aspect, especially for these businesses. Again, it might be somebody who, their heat just went out and they're trying to find, they just bought this house and they don't have anybody in the location. They're trying to find an HVAC company and they're going to want to call immediately. Having that call tracking not only gives some data on the advertising side of what keywords or what campaigns are working, because you can actually swap out phone numbers based on where the ad's coming from, which, where they came to the website from. But also, as you said, you can have the call recording and monitoring and be able to go back. One, to figure out, as you said, how is your sales team doing? Does everything align from that standpoint? But also, you can then track some of that back to actual customers. We had a client who we started with, and within the first 2 months, they sold a $100,000 job based on, this ad campaign that was being run. That was relatively small at that point. And because of the call tracking, they could actually, knew that customer came through this channel, like, this is great, this is working. They're not going to get that every single month from the advertising, but starting to prove that it actually is bringing in business now makes them more willing to, let's look at pushing that further as well.
And I talk about marketing kind of like picking apples off an apple tree. The first time you go to the apple tree, the apples are right there. Nobody's picked anything. So it's easy to pick them, right? So the
Right.
first time you do advertising, it works real well. And then you're like, oh, this works great. Let's do more and more and more. But the next time you go back to the apple tree, it's a little bit harder to find some apples. And over a period of a little bit of time, the only way you're going to get apples is with a ladder or a bucket truck because you got to go to the top of the tree. And that's why I think marketing can become more and more expensive and more difficult over time. And I don't think people necessarily realize that is the case. And you have to understand that, not just assume that what you do today is always going to work today, because the game of marketing changes every day as things are constantly changing. So you have to be good with that. You talked about customer lifetime value. So let's just talk a little bit about that. What is that and why is that important?
Sure. Yeah, so customer lifetime value is really one of the most important metrics to understand as you're trying to figure out what advertising works. Again, any company, Google, Meta, your local news company, email marketing companies, they'll all take your money, they'll all get you in front of people. They might even all generate customers. But until you understand what the value is of a customer, and how much money you can actually put in to generate a new customer, you're missing that whole piece of the picture of, will this actually work for my business? And at the same time, as we look at the financial side of it, it's not only will it work for my business, but what is the time frame that it works in? So if your business sells a one-off larger project, right? They're coming in for a new furnace, or they're coming in for a generator, or some larger home remodel project, and that's all it is. All of that value or all of that revenue may come into your business in 2 months. Quickly after the sale, it all comes in. There may be not a whole lot of residual income later. On the flip side, if your business is a ongoing lawn care business, you're going to come in and that customer is going to come and maybe start paying, next month, but they might on average be a customer for 3 years. Your value of the customer may still be the same, but that revenue comes over 3 years. You can't scale as quickly under that model because, even if you spent the same amount to acquire the customer, it takes 3 years to get that revenue back. So you really have to figure out how that profitability of each customer, what the value is, and how does that affect how much it's worth to acquire that customer. Some businesses have a mix of both. Some are more focused on the project, some are more focused on reoccurring. And from a business standpoint, as you know, there's some real big benefits to building a reoccurring revenue model. That might just mean your advertising is going to have to scale slower so that revenue keeps up with it. In the long run, that still may be a much more stable, profitable business. You just can't flip the switch and say, hey, now I'm going to spend X amount on ads. You might have to take it slower. So yeah, understanding that value of the customer and then understanding that referral percentage, how many of those customers refer others, those pieces can be analyzed and looked at alongside of your actual advertising costs or advertising metrics. And you can start to see where they align or where they misalign. And that's where you can really make a decision as to which channels are going to fit the best for this business, because each one has pluses and minuses.
And you have to figure out which one's affordable for you. And don't forget, when you set your prices, you've got to include the cost of marketing as part of your pricing when you do that, because it is a cost to do in business. And if it costs you X to acquire customers, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you need to ensure that that is included in your costs and that you are tracking it and making sure you're appropriately spending on it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that is the case, and they don't include it in their costs. And so they end up losing money at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, one other thing just to mention is a lot of people think too many different marketing channels are worth attacking at one time. And, I'll just give an example. We work with a franchise type business that has locations all around the country. Some are larger, some are smaller, and they're all selling the same thing. Geographically, they're different locations. But what's interesting is some of them, certain marketing efforts, like posting about customers on social media, gets them a ton of referrals. The other person 2 states over might run everything on paid ads. The other person 2 states somewhere else might make connections with a bunch of other business owners that refer them business. And all of those can actually work, and all of those can make that business profitable. Advertising can always fit within it to some extent, but there's not necessarily a right or wrong that only this one channel is going to work for me, and I need to find that magic channel. They probably all can work if they're done in the right way, and if you focus your efforts on one or two of them. And so I'd say any business, don't go chase and be like, oh, I need to post on social media, I need to run ads, I need to do email marketing, I need to do this. Yeah, they all might work. Run one or two of them and start seeing which makes sense and how you can improve those, and then start testing the next one and kind of work through that process is always useful.
That makes a lot of sense. If people would like help and want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to find you?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to chat. I always love talking about business and understanding businesses. That's actually one of the reasons I got into the agency side, is just to be able to talk with more business owners and help them out. So our website is uproot.com. That's UPROUTE. And my email address is andrew@uproot.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, we'd be more than happy to talk through things. And again, we're here to help share some info and hopefully share some insights and help the businesses grow.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.